If you grew up in the West, I bet you have a very strong memory of the first time you saw anime. You probably discovered Naruto during some late-night channel surfing, or found Ouran High School Host Club at the recommendation of a friend. Or maybe you're like me, and discovered what anime was because someone introduced you to the coolest thing you'd ever seen as a teenager in the 2010s. Nightcore. All of these nightcore-ified songs shared the same weeby as shit art style for their thumbnails, and I was just as obsessed with the art as I was with the songs. I was particularly obsessed with this thumbnail, found on an upload of the song Don't Fall in Love by DJ Splash. A banger I still love to this day. Thanks to the comments on that upload, which I think no longer exists, I learned that this image came from CLANNAD. With my curiosity for this new animation at max capacity, I spent the next 2 weeks going through a metamorphosis of turning into a brand new weeaboo as I watched CLANNAD and its afterstory. The way I remember it, CLANNAD was one of the greatest stories ever told. It made me feel things I'd never felt before. Afterstory specifically made me cry the most I had ever cried in my entire life. And I think that's actually still true to this day. I was only 14, I wasn't done cooking yet, I had a whole lot of emotions and hormones in my body. Everything hit harder back then. It's a story that gave you a full season and a half of romantic character building before devastating you to your soul. But those are just my memories of my feelings. Is this show really so sad? Does it really have such a flawless romance? Is it really this good? Or am I just remembering a bygone era of my life? That's the question I aim to answer today. I'm going to rewatch the entire series, just like I did when I was 14, and try to reevaluate CLANNAD from an adult perspective. It's been 12 long years. Let's rewatch my gateway anime. Of course, there will be spoilers ahead. If you like these kinds of videos, please leave me a like and a subscribe. With that said, let's get started on this nostalgia-filled journey. I'm gonna be honest, CLANNAD's cold open does a phenomenal job at setting this particular vibe.
Do you like this school? I have to say that I love it very, very much.
The musical chimes, the desaturated look, and the pretty solid writing makes this a very memorable scene. It's a great first impression. Unfortunately, the rest of this first episode falls pretty flat. I have a memory of this anime, and I gotta say, my memory varies quite a bit from how I perceive it now. I remember the story being a lot more immediately engaging when I was younger. This first episode doesn't really set up anything, besides putting faces to characters and getting a surface-level introduction to them. This episode has zero plot and nearly zero stakes, but the character interactions are good enough to keep this episode from being totally boring.
I wonder if maybe...
Why don't you just hang in there a little bit longer? I'll help you.
The most important interactions are naturally between the soon-to-be main couple, Tomoya and Nagisa. Both of them get really good characterization. Tomoya is a good-natured delinquent with a lot of riz and a desire to do a little trolling.
Keep it down, Shall I kick him back?
Nagisa is the sort of person who doesn't have a single mean bone in her body. She's kind beyond words, and just a little quirky. Of course, seeing what her parents are like, that's really no surprise.
Oh, I don't know. I think he's right, Okazaki. You guys are a lot alike.
Huh? No way, me and him? My own daughter.
Yes, sir.
What a shock, what a betrayal.
Something that's actually better than I remember is the visuals. Maybe it's because my first viewing of CLANNAD was probably a 360p YouTube video as a kid, but seeing it now, it looks so much more vivid and colorful than it does in my memory. At the end of episode 1, I'd say I'm feeling more optimistic than not about the potential of this anime and this rewatch as a whole. Episode 2 establishes an overarching goal for our characters to work towards. They want to try reviving the drama club. It's going to take the entire season to actually accomplish that goal, which I remember thinking was pretty annoying in my first watch. I was impatient and just wanted to see these characters accomplish their goals right away. Of course, now that I have a brain, I know that taking time to accomplish something is obviously better for storytelling. My thoughts as a kid were pretty underdeveloped and immature. I specifically remember feeling like they had too many out-of-the-blue roadblocks. But the biggest of these roadblocks came from Fuko, who's the character at the center of CLANNAD's first major arc. Nagisa puts the drama club aside for a bit to help Fuko with the problems she's facing.
It's just not possible. After all, I see her sleeping figure every day in the hospital.
Fuko is also the character who formally introduces the supernatural elements that are present in CLANNAD. I thought the inclusion of the supernatural into this type of grounded story was absolutely mind-blowing as a kid. Keep in mind, this was my first anime. The kind of stuff I was watching back then was devoid of anything like this. CLANNAD was my first real exposure to this mix of magic and realism.
A new light is born. Sometime long ago, or perhaps sometime in the distant future.
Going hand in hand with the spirituality aspect is all of these seemingly random scenes of the robot and the girl in the other world. These scenes appear to have no connection at all to the main plot, which made them a very fascinating mystery to me. They have immaculate vibes and feel incredibly important despite being so far out of left field. As a kid, I desperately wanted to understand what all of this meant, because it had to mean something. But I would have to wait for dozens of episodes before getting any answers.
It might be better to put some space between you and your dad. No matter what happens, you're still family. If you're apart, I know you'll miss each other.
In the meantime, CLANNAD likes showing us scenes of characters talking to each other a lot. I'm going to be honest. A lot of this feels pretty darn slow to me now. I think it's even teetering upon being boring, but it doesn't quite stoop that low. Reason being, these characters are just very well written, even if the scenarios they're in are kind of dull. Take Fuko for example. She's a very funny person in her own unintentional way.
I'll do it to commemorate your promise never to say the worst again.
I'll keep on saying it.
Then to commemorate your graduation from Starfish.
I will walk with the starfish forever.
I think she's super endearing. She's so endearing to me. The ending to her arc really did get me a little. We find out that she's essentially a ghost who has to disappear from this world. I don't think it's as sad as I recall it being, but it did still make me tear up for sure.
Thank you very much. I had a lot of fun. The most fun I've ever had in my life.
And that makes me wonder, is it not hitting me as hard now because I already know what's going to happen, or is it not hitting me as hard now because it's just not as good as I thought it was? Though CLANNAD does have several clear faults, it does get one thing incredibly right. Building the relationship between our two leads.
I owe it all to you, Okazaki.
Don't say that. I haven't done anything.
No, you're just being modest.
No, you've just gotten stronger.
The time Tomoya and Nagisa spent together feels very real to me. They have a lot of pretty standard conversations about all kinds of random things. Their interests, their past, their hopes for the future, whatever happens to come up. It's mundane in a way, but it's believable. Watching them, I feel like they're becoming friends instead of romantic partners. And the best romances start out when both people are just friends. In a show with nearly 50 episodes, taking things slow makes the journey that much more meaningful. But there's more characters than just Tomoya and Nagisa. There's a whole cast of secondary characters who each get to have their own time in the spotlight. The first one to get several focused episodes is Kotomi.
To Kotomi, even if your life is full of tears and sorrow, this world is still a beautiful place. This is Father's handwriting.
Somehow, I had completely 100% forgotten everything about Kotomi. I have no idea why I would. Watching it now, this section is my favorite section so far. This is the first time in this rewatch that CLANNAD has shown me something truly incredible. Her story is about losing her parents in a plane crash when she was just a child, and feeling undeserved guilt over their death.
So please, God, I'm begging you, I'll do anything. Please, God, don't leave me alone.
It hits me very close to home as well. I myself am a Christian, so seeing Kotomi praying to God, asking to just not be alone, to make the pain go away, is something that I can relate to. Receiving that final message from her departed parents is both cathartic and tragic. It brings Kotomi much needed closure. Her parents loved her more than anything in the world. Their love was so strong, Kotomi could still hear it past the veil of death. That message is powerful. I'm mystified that I don't remember this story.
Welcome back, Mom. Welcome back, Dad. I've missed you both so much.
And all that actually begs an interesting question. Do I think this is the best thing I've seen so far because it's the only thing I don't remember among a series that's full of phenomenal sequences? Or is this actually the best part of CLANNAD up until this point, regardless of if I'd remembered it or not? Either way, I'm happy to finally be eating some good fucking food. I didn't remember how much focus was put on the other girls in this first season. I recall Nagisa playing a much bigger role than she actually does. Maybe I'm getting season 1 and 2 conflated a little bit. Because it's not until the second half of this season that CLANNAD begins to focus much more on Nagisa and her wonderfully wacky family.
Talk about doting parents.
Just wait. One day when you have a daughter, you'll be the same way we are.
Yeah, right. Are you kidding me?
Her parents, Akio and Sanai, are potentially my favorite characters. They're equal parts funny and serious. They can fit whatever tone they need to for the given scene. It's kind of magical.
We promised that we'd always be by her side. So we both changed careers and decided to start a bakery together.
Speaking of parents, it is so refreshing to actually see some adults. So many of these high school romances straight up just do not show the guardians of the main pair. In CLANNAD, we meet the parents of both Tomoya and Nagisa in the first episode. It just feels so much more realistic to me to make their families part of their journey. Tomoya has a very strained relationship with his father.
Even if we didn't speak much, I was always happy to have you around.
Sorry, but I have my reasons for this. Try to understand.
I'll do my best.
And Nagisa has an incredibly positive relationship with hers. In fact, her positive relationship significantly impacts this story's climax. Nagisa learns that she became very ill as a child, forcing her parents to abandon their careers to take care of her. After learning this, Nagisa begins to feel immense guilt for ruining her parents' lives, a feeling which fully manifests itself at the worst possible time.
A child's dream is their parents' dream. You can make it come true for us. Don't you realize that our dream is to watch you live out your dream?
Given that this is a romance story, you'd expect Tomoya to be the main voice that gets through to Nagisa during her darkest moment, but the fact that it's her father instead is kind of wonderful. It's also not at all how I remember it. I was sure that Tomoya and Nagisa were the focus of the scene, rather than Nagisa and Akio. I don't really know why I recalled it that way, to be honest. I guess I just perceived Tomoya as being more important back then? I probably related to him more. Now, though, I know that I appreciate what Akio was saying a whole hell of a lot more as an adult than I ever did as a teenager. This climax puts a lot of emphasis on the relationship between a child and their parent, which was a genuine surprise to me.
You get it, Nagisa? You are our dream! That's what being parents is all about! That's what being a family is all about!
Overall, CLANNAD's first season is good. It's not great. I certainly shouldn't have it as a 9 out of 10 on my anime list, but it's an enjoyable watch. Some of the plot and scenarios are kind of dull, but all of the characters are genuinely amazing. It really makes you wonder what an anime with these characters would be like if they had a story that was just as engaging as they were. Lucky for us, we don't have to wonder, because we already have it. It's time for me to face my beautiful childhood trauma and rewatch CLANNAD After Story. After Story starts out right where Season 1 left off, both plot-wise and tonally. The first 8 episodes feel just like more Season 1. These episodes show a handful of smaller vignettes that relate to different side characters in the high school. Of these, I only remembered Tsunohara's story, despite it being one of the weaker ones in my opinion. I think the best vignette was Misai's. She gets a whole ass flashback arc to when she was in high school. We get to see a beautifully doomed romance between her and this mysterious young boy. Even though it only takes up 2 episodes, This is a very well executed romance that's just as wonderful as it is tragic.
Inside this, there's a light that grants wishes. Oh no, it's gone. Maybe that means I don't need a wish after all, or maybe it's already been granted.
These episodes also reintroduce the supernatural into this narrative, something that's been kind of missing since Fuko's story in Season 1. I remember the supernatural element playing a much bigger role throughout the entire show than it actually does. Even though the mystical moments are quite uncommon, they are actually crazy important, which is probably why I thought they were more present.
Whenever something good happens or someone achieves true happiness, an orb of light appears in the sky. No one knows where the orbs come from, but what we do know is that they're a symbol of happiness born from the kindness in people's hearts.
After this handful of small, well-written vignettes wraps up, Episode 9 presents us with the beginning of the end of After Story. My memory from here on out is so much clearer than my memory of anything that's come before. With what's on the horizon, how could it not be?
You'll stay with me?
Yes, of course I'll stay with you. No matter what happens, forever and ever.
This show, post-graduation, takes kind of a major tonal shift. It's a lot more melancholy. On the one hand, we do get to spend a lot more time just on Nagisa and Tomoya, but on the other, the show feels so much more lonely without the expansive cast. And I think that's on purpose. CLANNAD wants us to feel like Nagisa and Tomoya are everything. Like there's nothing else in this world besides them. And I think it does a very good job at making them feel that important.
Nagisa,
Yes,
will you marry me?
yes.
I always thought that slowly developing feelings in a new relationship was my favorite part of the romance genre. But CLANNAD is showing me that's not necessarily true. Seeing an established romance between adults in love is somehow even more compelling to me than seeing a budding romance between high schoolers.
She sees me off in the morning, worries about me while I'm at work, and makes sure I'm okay when I make it home. As long as I have her, I don't think any job could get me down.
Carrying the romance past the confession and into the real adult world is not something I've ever seen another anime do. And I think that's a shame. Through this framing, we get to see Nagisa and Tomoya navigate real problems. Differing schedules, family troubles, living on your own. And through all these struggles, we see that they are resolutely in love. It feels like the whole world really does genuinely revolve around them. And I'm so invested in seeing their adult lives together. Their future is sure to be filled with wonderful moments.
Nagisa and Tomoya are having a child. Congratulations!
Even the monotony of regular life feels earth-shakingly important around them. They still make sparks fly every time they talk. They're the perfect match. I'm happy to say that even after 12 years of new anime under my belt, their romance remains just as pure and magical as I remember it upon my first viewing.
It's about Nagisa and the baby. I spoke with the doctor the other day, and he said there may be some risks we didn't know about when she gives birth.
Now that we are in the back half of After Story, things are going to get a whole lot more depressing. This narrative has planted little seeds all throughout its runtime about what's eventually going to happen. Nagisa having poor health has always been part of her character, but never did it seem like it was leading to an earth-shattering change in the narrative. Even with the hints, the turn this story takes is so unthinkable. that I never predicted it would actually happen.
Alright then, let's make a promise.
A promise?
Yeah, we're going to come to the beach with Ushio next year no matter what. It's a promise.
A promise.
I'm genuinely afraid to keep watching. I know how much this series hurt me as a child, and I'm concerned that as an adult, this series won't hurt me as much as it did back then. It was meaningful enough for me to remember it clearly all this time. It was a foundational memory, to be honest. And now I'm afraid that if I finish After Story, I'll realize that this show doesn't deserve the towering pedestal I've placed it on. I don't want the story to stop being so meaningful to me. But given how teary-eyed I am just thinking about what comes next, that fear seems to be severely unfounded. Nagisa's death is absolutely devastating. I know that I'm not as sad now as I was back then, but that's only because I knew it was coming. If I didn't remember this, I know it would have brought me to my knees. I may not be crying as much now as I did as a child, but I certainly am crying very hard. As a 14-year-old watching this, after seeing this moment, I knew I had to watch the rest of the anime in a single sitting, on the off chance that somehow they would undo Nagisa's death. I didn't want her to be dead, and I hated knowing that her death sent Tomoya spiraling into pain and depression for the next 5 years. That was the only thing I could even think about as I walked into the final chunk of After Story. All my thoughts were placed squarely on Nagisa, despite this show having a lot more than that going on.
But for this trip, I was thinking everyone could go.
Who's everyone?
You know, everyone!
Case in point is Ushio's introduction, which I did remember very clearly. She's filmed like some kind of ghost or mythical creature. Always just out of frame, just out of sight. What I didn't pick up on as a kid, though, is why this scene is filmed this way. CLANNAD is communicating to us how Tomoya sees his own daughter. She's a ghost, a phantom, a painful memory of the past. She's not something Tomoya wants to be deeply connected to.
I want you to tell me about my mommy.
Why don't you ask Sanai?
Of course, I already knew that Tomoya and Ushio eventually would spend more time together as the episodes continued, but I didn't recall how meaningful it was to see them grow closer. Tomoya goes on a journey of self-discovery and learns the importance of family. He learns so much more about how his own father loved him, and simultaneously realizes how much he loves Ushio. Their relationship is the heart and soul of these final few episodes. And I can't believe it didn't leave more of an impression on me.
I could tell you about Mommy if you'd like that.
This series is still making me cry today, just like it did back then. But much to my surprise, now I'm crying for entirely different reasons. As a child, I cried non-stop because I was devastated by the tragedy that Nagisa had died. But as an adult, I'm crying because I'm in awe of how wonderful it is to see Tomoya learning to live.
I finally found it. Something only I can protect. A precious treasure that only I can protect. It was right here.
When I was younger, I could only think about how unfair Nagisa's death was. It framed my entire memory of the season. I couldn't think about anything else. But now I see that this story is so much more than just a tragedy. It's a beautiful story about stepping into the light after years swallowed by darkness. It's about reconciling with your family after a horrific event and finding the strength to move forward together. Finding out that it's easier to move forward together. Obviously, this applies to Tomoya and Ushio's relationship, and to a lesser extent Tomoya with the Furukawas. But the relationship that surprised me the most, that left me bawling, was the relationship between Tomoya and his father.
You've done more than enough for me. You can rest now. You can finally go back home. Go and spend some time with your mother. Okay?
Learning about how much his father cared for him, loved him, and seeing the parallels between Mr. Okazaki and Tomoya and Ushio just broke me beyond repair. This scene of their final goodbye is what turned my leaky eyes into a torrential downpour. Them parting ways in love and acceptance is so beautiful. But that's not the thing that hit me the most. It's Ushio's reaction to this situation that made me so devastated. Look at her face. Doesn't she look confused? She's too young and innocent to understand the importance of what's going on right in front of her. It reminds me of, well, me. I know I didn't understand this scene either when I first watched it. I was too young. I was just as confused as Ushio. Now I'm mature enough to understand the significance of these events. But the element that pushed me fully over the edge is the appearance of the Wish Orb. This is the moment it all hit me. Mr. Okazaki's only wish for his son was to grow up happy and healthy, and to know that he'd done a good job as a father. The Orb of Light is the proof that this wish has come true. This entire scene is about the love that a parent has for their child. It's a love that child cannot fathom, cannot imagine, cannot understand until they experience it themselves firsthand with their own children. Only after feeling this very same love towards Ushio does Tomoya understand exactly how his father felt towards him. Of course, I didn't get this when I was 14. The supernatural Orb of Light is the visual aid that sends this message flying home, and sends me into a fit of tears. You'd think after all the crying CLANNAD has put you through, it might ease up on the heartstrings a little, but CLANNAD has no intention of giving you a single second of breath. The final stretch of After Story is about Ushio getting a very similar sickness to Nagisa's right before she died. Given what kind of story this has been so far, Ushio's death is already a foregone conclusion. Tomoya is destined to lose everything all over again. These last few episodes also finally tie in the other world and all of the supernatural happenings into the main plot, and allows for both narratives to conclude simultaneously. I think this story would be a lot weaker without the inclusion of these supernatural elements sprinkled throughout. The attention brought to the orbs of light into the other world with the girl and the robot are essential to making CLANNAD's ending not feel like a cop-out. After Story basically pulls an "it was all a dream" twist, and undoes the past several episodes of utter devastation. But because the supernatural had been hinted at as early as Season 1, and that it was the primary mystery to get answered throughout the entire show, it just kind of makes this ending work. I'm a much bigger fan of happy endings than sad endings anyway, so for CLANNAD to wrap up this way is totally fine by me. So, is After Story as good as I remember? That's an incredibly difficult question for me to answer. The first 8 episodes are really just an extension of Season 1, with some slightly better execution. Additionally, it's not quite as sad as I remember it being, which was the defining feature of this anime to me. In my memory, this anime was much longer. The first time I watched CLANNAD, it felt like time had stopped, leaving nothing in this world besides me and this story. It was a magical feeling. A feeling that is lost as an adult with more anxiety, responsibility, and experience. I wouldn't have been able to find anything negative to say about it as a child. Sure, maybe it's unfair to compare my measured analysis of today to how this show made me feel in my pure subjective memory. But that's the question I made this whole video to answer. So after a lot of thought, considering the strengths and weaknesses I didn't pick up on in my first viewing, I think I have to be honest and say no. CLANNAD After Story is not as good as I remember. It's better. As a kid, I only remembered how Nagisa's death made me feel. Now I see that After Story is so much more than just a sad, tragic anime. The themes I was either too sad or too immature to notice in the past revealed themselves to me in this rewatch with brilliant clarity. CLANNAD is not just an anime about romantic love and loss, but it's an anime about familial bonds, pushing through unbearable turmoil, finding the joys in life, and discovering the transcendent love that connects a parent to their child. I am boggled at how incredible this anime is. I never would have expected that this anime was hiding these deeper themes my childhood brain was incapable of perceiving. But I guess that's what happens after 12 years of growing up. It makes me wonder, what else from my childhood has more meaning than I originally thought? I think I need to do this again with another anime. I need to rewatch something else that I remember fondly but could very well be hiding secrets I didn't pick up on when I was younger. Something else with themes of death, peace, and acceptance. I think there is no better anime to do that with than with the second anime I ever watched, the one I chose to sit through right after finishing CLANNAD, Angel Beats. So join me in my next anime video, where I rewatch this classic to see how well it holds up, and more importantly, if there are any secrets it hid from me in my youthful mind. But between now and then, there will probably be some video game related videos. My channel is full of both anime and video game content, and I highly recommend checking some of it out. A like, a subscribe, or a comment on this video would be fantastic too. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please remember to stay positive and have a wonderful day, everyone.